Hi, and welcome back to Lisa's Stamp Studio. We're going to be making a beautiful ZFold spinner card today using the brand new Snowflake Wishes bundle. That's the stamp set and the coordinating dies. And if you weren't aware of it, bundles save you 10% when you get both products together, which is a great savings because you're definitely going to want one with the other. Here's a quick look at the card we're going to be creating and the beautiful spin that that card has. I'm going to walk you through step by step and give you lots of tips along the way. And if this is your first time visiting my channel, I would love to have you subscribe. Make sure you click the subscribe button down below and next to it that bell icon. If you click that and you click on the words all, you'll receive notifications when I'm live right here on YouTube, as well as when I share a new video. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's fun fold card. We're going to start with a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 Whisper White cardstock. We're going to do 2 score lines. So I'm going to be using my Stampin' Trimmer here. The light blade is for scoring and the dark blade is for cutting. The great thing I love about this trimmer is you're able to keep both of these on the track at the same time. They navigate up and down out of the way, making it really convenient. I love that the cutting guide is clear so you can see where you're going. The first one is going to be in half at 4 1/4. And we're going to score. Then we're going to scoot over to 2 1/8, and we're going to line it up and we're going to score. And that's all there is to the Z-fold. It may be difficult for you to see the score lines in the video, but I'm going to go ahead and fold that in half on that original center score line. I'll use my bone folder for that nice crisp edge. And then there's another score line here, which actually splits this in half on the front of the card. So I'm going to fold it back on itself and I'll use my bone folder. This is where we get that Z shape from. I'm going to be protecting my work surface with one of the small grid sheets. And this beautiful designer series paper is called Snowflake Splendor. And there's a lot of beautiful patterns in there with a beautiful frosted feel. This paper side, although variegated, is very simple, which is going to allow me to add some extra texture using the stamps from the stamp set. The images I'm choosing are from Snowflake Wishes, and I'll be using the entire bundle with the coordinating dies, which I'll share with you in just a few moments. I'll be using the Pool Party ink pad for this, and I've chosen 2 snowflakes from that stamp set. This is one of them, and I don't want it to be too dark because I'm going to add a greeting to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink this up, and I'm going to stamp it off here on my scratch paper to lighten that shade, and then I'm going to stamp it randomly here on that designer series paper. I want this stamped image to look more like designer series paper itself than actually stamped on this pattern. I'm switching over now to a slightly smaller snowflake from that same stamp set, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to ink it up, we're going to stamp off, and I'm going to fill in some of those areas where the larger snowflake was placed. My next step is to add the greeting for this. So I'm going to use the Balmy Blue ink pad, and I've pulled out the greeting from another stamp set. Because of the size of the panel here, I found that the greetings in this particular stamp set didn't fit well. This is where your investment with your other stamps comes into play. I've pulled this one from a stamp set called Dove of Hope, and you'll see a lot more of this here in the studio. But today I've gone ahead and I've chosen that greeting. I'm going to ink that up in the Balmy Blue ink, and I'm going to stamp that here near the bottom. I have my silicone craft sheet here. I love using this when I'm going to be adding adhesive because liquid glue, hot glue, and adhesive will not stick to it. I'm going to take that panel and I'm going to flip that over, and what's going to be my wrong side? I'm using my Stampin' Seal Plus, and I'm going to go ahead and add adhesive here to the back side. I'm going to be very careful to cover this generously because we're going to be doing some punching through here. We're going to add this panel here to the side of the cardstock. So I'm going to open this up to make it easier for my hand, making sure that my greeting is on the left-hand side. And then I'm going to center this, leaving a margin of that white cardstock showing all the way around. And then we're going to tack that in place. Our next step is to use the 2 1/4 inch circle punch. And obviously, if you don't have this, the layering circles dies or a circle die of your choice will work. We are actually going to open up this panel and we are going to use this upside down. So you're going to see that the greeting is facing backwards here at the top of your screen. I'm going to turn my punch upside down and I'm going to slide this down the crease. I'm going in as far as I possibly can, and I'm looking visually to see that that score line is down the center of my punch. And then you can manipulate it slightly left and right until you're happy with it, and then give it a punch. You're going to see now that this has left us an opening here on that Z-fold. This is where the snowflake is actually going to maneuver between. While we're working with the adhesive, I've cut another piece of designer series paper. This is the opposite side of the one we just stamped on, and we're going to add adhesive to the back. This now will get mounted here to the center inside of the card base. Now let's work on the snowflake. This is balmy blue glimmer paper. It's absolutely beautiful. Now you may be wondering, it's gorgeous, but is it going to make a mess? And the answer is no. Stampin' Up! Does a fantastic job with this. I'm going to rub it very vigorously, and you're going to see that there's no glitter residue left behind, which also makes this very easy to die cut, especially with intricate dies. I've chose this beautiful detailed snowflake to fit within that opening, and that is coming from the So Many Snowflakes dies. This is part of the Snowflake Wishes bundle. Now you can purchase them separately, or as a bundle you'll save 10% and get both. But I want to share a hidden gem in these dies, and that is this additional die here. This beautiful snowflake frame is going to add a lot of density to your cards and 3D projects this holiday season. You're actually going to need two of whatever image you're going to have spin in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and place this here, and I'm going to run this through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. I've just taken this out of the machine. I'm going to remove the die. The one thing I love about this new die cutting and embossing machine is how beautifully it die cuts. And because this is glimmer paper, I'm going to take my time and I'm just going to pop out where it's die cut around the edges. I like to work from the back side that's white so it's easy to see where you're going. I'll use my Take Your Pick tool. I have the paper piercing tool attachment, and I'm just going to work here on the back side and just poke out those centers that have been die cut. In addition to that, this adds a beautiful layer as a negative image to your card, so don't throw these away. I die cut one other right before you join me, so we have our two snowflakes. Now let's talk about putting them together with the string. This is regular household thread, and I chose white because it coordinates with my card. I've cut off about 12 inches, which is way more than I'm going to need, and I'm going to lay that here off to the side. I'm going to take my first snowflake and I'm going to turn it upside down. We are going to add a small amount of glue right down the center. Now you want to be careful that you're using it sparingly because you don't want it to ooze through all those openings. I prefer the multi-purpose liquid glue because it's very, very strong. It allows me also a little bit of shift time to try to get this one on the top and to get them as perfectly aligned as possible. You're going to want to get your multi-purpose liquid glue started so that it's flowing well. So that's what the silicone craft sheet is for. Liquid glue, like I said, will not stick to this. Once this dries, it's going to turn opaque and then it can simply be rubbed right off. So now that I have this started, I'm actually able to use that tip to pick up some of the glue from the puddle that I've created. So I'm going to add a little bit here at the top. And I'm very carefully going to come down the center, staying within the perimeters of that cardstock on the back side of the glimmer paper. You don't need much because this is a very small piece of thread. Once you have the glue applied, go ahead and take your string, find your center, and you're going to put it right down the center of the glue. I like to hold it there for just under a minute so that it has proper placement. And like I said, because it's very, very thin, it's going to stick very easily. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add glue to some of those larger areas to add the other snowflake that we've die cut to the top. So I'm going to very carefully going to work and I'm going to add glue in various areas. Now if you're having difficulty getting this to stay in place, let me give you a tip. Use your Take Your Pick tool to hold the paper in place, which will help you easily add the glue where it's needed. Now once the glue has been applied, we're going to take the other die cut snowflake and we're going to line these up the best that we can. Now keep in mind that the paper itself on the back side is a little bit pliable, so you're going to need to take your tool and you're going to maneuver these pieces, which is one reason why I love the liquid glue, because it allows me to position this carefully, aligning all those layers the very best that I can. Now once you have it all tacked down, you're going to go ahead and you're going to press and let this sit and dry. This is sat for just under a minute, and now we're ready to add it to our card. Let me push this off to the side and let me give you some tips about this. Now with the ZFold, we're going to be working on the back side here, right down the center where it's not going to be visible from the front of the card. So to make it easier for yourself, let's go ahead and let's open this up, and I'm going to place my silicone craft sheet underneath me so that it's easier for you to see. In addition to that, it's going to allow me to make sure that the glue stays exactly where I want it. Keep in mind that this is going to be spinning. In order to keep this as taut as possible, the tip I'd like to share with you is to go ahead and grab a piece of small washi tape. Now sometimes this can be a little bit too sticky, so I'm just going to manhandle it a little bit, and it's going to be too thick. So I'm going to tear mine in half, I'm going to take half of that and I'm going to line up my string right here on the crease of this card. And then I'm going to tack that in place. I've now got the bottom half of the string and I'm pulling it tightly right down the bottom half of that crease where this fold is going to be. And then I'll tack that in place again. This is going to help keep this position properly. You need to make sure that the snowflake or your image is going to fit within the circumference of the opening, otherwise it will not spin. You can see I've got a little bit less space here than I do here. So I've taken the top of the string and I'm very lightly going to pull. Keep in mind this is just tacking it in place. It's not guaranteeing its placement. And then I'll burnish that to hold it down. Now comes the next step. We are going to take the liquid glue once again and we are going to cover this area. Now you don't have to go crazy and you can use any clear glue that you'd like. Now the one thing I love about the multi-purpose liquid glue is that it's strong, but sometimes when it dries, it's a little bit tacky. So I have a tip for you about that once we've gotten this applied. So you can see I'm going to come right over the thread and I'm gluing that right down the seam here on the back side of the front of this card. I'm also taking the tip to help thin out the glue to make sure that it's not too thick. Remember, the string is very, very thin. You're going to let this sit and dry for a few minutes, and then we're going to remove the washi tape and we're going to fill in those negative areas. I allowed that to sit for about 5 minutes, so I'm going to come over now and I'm going to carefully remove the washi tape. I'm coming back now with my liquid glue, making sure that it's flowing well. And I'm going to come back and fill in those string areas right on the crease that were covered by the washi tape. And then I'm going to allow another few minutes for this to dry. Now, the great thing about this project is if you're creating multiples of these, you can do this in an assembly line fashion, which means you can do this on a number of cards at one time and allow them all to dry at once. Now, like most glues, what happens when it's dry, it's a little bit tacky, and that can actually impede with the opening of the card. So this is a great tip for you. I actually have an anti-static bag here that's used for heat embossing. Now, Stampin' Up! Used to sell this. It was called the Embossing Buddy. And if you don't have it, a little bit of baby powder is going to work fantastic. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to tap that right onto that glue area, and it's going to cover it with a very fine powder mist, which is going to remove the tackiness from this area. You might notice that it leaves a little bit of a powder residue. So I've taken just a small piece of a Swiffer cloth, and I'm just going to very lightly go over that to brush off that powder. This is a great way also to pick up embossing powders off of your work surface because everything sticks to it really, really well. I can use it directly over my silicone craft sheet as well. And now that the glue is dry, we can just rub that right off. The next step now is to trim those strings, and the best way to do that is to hold the card horizontally and then come right against the edge of the cardstock using that as a guide and cut away the excess on both the top and the bottom. Once the card is finished, you're going to fold it in half and then make your Z-fold here on the left. Let's add our embellishment and then let me teach you on how to create the spin portion of this card. I'm using the beautiful blue adhesive backed gems, and you're going to see that they come in 2 different tones and varying sizes. You can go with a little bit more of an iridescent look to really play up the center of your snowflake, or you can keep it fairly subtle. Just so that you can see a really fun alternative, I'm going to choose the more iridescent one. I'm going to place that right here in the center of my snowflake. Now you're going to need one other because keep in mind this is going to rotate. So I'm using my Take Your Pick tool attachment. I'm flipping the snowflake over and I'm mimicking the placement from the front side here to the back side, and I'll press those in place. They're very easy to use since they have glue dots already on the back. All right, the next thing is to wind up the card. So all you're going to do is you're going to take your fingers inside of here and you're going to twist it. That is going to actually create some tension on that string so that when the card is closed and then reopened, the snowflake or your image will spin. All right, so I'm ready and I'm going to close my card, and now I've presented it. They've pulled it out of the envelope, and when they open it, your snowflake is going to spin. This is really an impressive and beautiful card and not at all difficult. The best part is the back side where we've added the string is not obtrusive at all. You'll be able to find that suite of products in the current mini catalog with Stampin' Up! We also have an annual catalog, and if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you are interested in receiving copies, you can request them over at lisasstampstudio.com. If you have enjoyed today's video, would you please give it a thumbs up here on YouTube, which is a like? It certainly helps, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.